Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Does Anthony Joshua have a rematch or not for Daniel Dubois? As we know, Joshua got starched in the 5th round by Dubois in their fight at Wembley Stadium, and immediately after the fight, Eddie Hearn said that there was a rematch clause, and there is no doubt about that. And let's rewind, let's hear what he had to say then.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll exercise that rematch clause. I mean, I think that's a given, but he'll need a rest, and it's a dangerous fight. This guy's growing in confidence all the time, but he'll believe he can hurt Dubois. He'll believe he can beat him.
So he didn't misspeak, right? That was pretty clear. Rematch clause he thought would be exercised, and a second fight would be very tough for Anthony Joshua. But what we have now is a situation where that's all been called into doubt, and actually Eddie Hearn has walked back some of his comments. So see here on screen. So this is a story from Sky. This is Frank Warren confirming to Sky that there is no rematch clause in Joshua's contract, and they can have it if they want it anyway. I don't have a problem with that. And I'm sure that Frank Warren wouldn't mind it, because another big fight at Wembley, 90,000+ people, lots of money for all to be had. And Sky says of its understanding of the rematch situation or not, it says Sky Sports News understands there's no rematch clause regarding Daniel Dubois and Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua is contracted for one more fight with Riyadh Season, and Dubois could be a potential opponent for that, but Dubois is under no obligation to have an immediate rematch with Joshua. So that does contradict what Eddie Hearn said immediately after the fight. And it is kind of curious, because answer this question for me. Would Anthony Joshua go into any of his big fights without a rematch clause? I don't think he would. I mean, this is why a lot of people have called Matchroom rematch room, because there's always a rematch clause in there for their big fighters if they lose. So I don't know if, what we're hearing is actually accurate, but it's hard to know. But what Hearn said immediately after the fight was pretty categoric. But I think for a lot of fans, we'd rather not see the rematch given what occurred. And as I've already said in some videos post that fight, a fresh fight would, I think, for Dubois be the best thing. And Frank Warren indicated he wants to keep him active. He wants to potentially have him out by the end of 2024. Given the beatdown, I'd rather not see the rematch. Perhaps there is some intent to make it down the line, but what do we make of Eddie Hearn's comments? Because he is walking it back. And here's another story. And Eddie Hearn, his advice now has changed. He says, my advice is don't do anything until December 21, Usyk versus Fury. If Tyson Fury loses that fight, you set up a big fight with Anthony Joshua. If Tyson wins that fight, you make the voluntary defense against Anthony Joshua for the Unified Heavyweight Championship. In AJ's mind, I think all he'll want to do is get back in with Daniel Dubois, because they'll think they can beat him. In my mind, I think we have to wait and see what happens with Tyson Fury. And actually, after the fight, Joshua was very non-committal about the what next. He didn't call out Dubois for the rematch, and obviously Eddie Hearn was the one that said he thought that he would exercise the rematch clause with Dubois. So Eddie Hearn, is kind of all over the place here with his statements. It can't all be true. As they say sometimes with promoters, they can't lie straight in bed. So what is in fact going on here? I mean, perhaps there has been a word from the Saudis or someone involved with this that actually they're saying, let's leave well enough alone and potentially have another fresh fight. Regardless of the outcome in December, Josh was going to be in a big fight with someone at some point in 2025. It sounds like Frank Warren and Daniel Dubois would like to have another fight as soon as possible, and I don't see Joshua turning himself around in 3 months for a fight by the end of 2024. He just doesn't fight that often, typically. Sure, against some lower level opposition, he was having 3 fights a year, but traditionally in the past 10 years or so, or 8 years or so, he's rather been sort of 2 fights a year, and that's his lot. So it would shock me if he was back in the ring. But I think a lot of people with these comments and the walking back of the statements and now saying, hey, let's wait for December between Usyk and Fury, and potentially we can face Tyson Fury if he loses. Yeah, it's a different rhetoric. And just to be clear, this is what Eddie Hearn said after the fight.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll exercise that rematch clause. I mean, I think that's a given, but he'll need a rest. And it's a dangerous fight. This guy's growing in confidence all the time. But he'll believe he can hurt Dubois. He'll believe he can beat him.
He didn't misspeak. There was obviously in his mind a rematch clause, and that he was going to exercise it. Joshua, that is. And I don't think Eddie Hearn would be saying something like that so very publicly unless it was true. Remember, he's very closely involved in all matters Joshua. If there wasn't some truth to that, why would he say it? Perhaps, like I say, there's been some influences, like the Saudis perhaps, who've said, let's just tally-ho, there's some other potential options here. We want to see Joshua in another fight. And this is one of the potential options that I've explained since the fight. That could occur because we saw Deontay Wilder and Zhang Jilei not exercise rematch clauses with Joseph Parker. So they've got a lot of sway, and I would say that there is something at play here because Eddie Hearn's done a 180 and walked back his comments. I mean, I think for a lot of fans, they'll be thinking, well, this is good news, that Daniel Dubois will go on to face someone else and we're not going to see the rematch, at least not now. I think a lot of people would want to see Joshua go away, get a couple of good wins before even entertaining a Dubois rematch, just because of what we saw. It was a one-sided beatdown. And Joshua and Fury, if that happens, I think fans would be generally pretty happy with that, given these two have been amongst the biggest names of the generation. But was there a rematch clause? Is there a rematch clause? Maybe we'll never know. Eddie Hearn thought so, but now his memory is a little less clear by the look of it. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.